friends, how's it going? It's Ultimus, and today I wanted to talk to you guys about some of the new changes that have gone on and come through over the past week to the Arms Warrior talent tree. Now, as we expected and have come to anticipate, a lot of things are going to change and have changed since alpha testing began with Legion. Now, all this information I've picked up on from watching streams, watching YouTube videos, and just keeping up with the paper, more or less, or the page information that's been brought out via MMO Champion, Wowhead, all that kind of stuff. So while I don't have any hands-on experience with this stuff, I've seen enough of it to feel somewhat familiar with it and feel like I have a grasp on it to be able to talk with you guys about it, which again is how I'm basically having to get any and all of my Legion information right now. Anyways, since I'm not special enough to be in the alpha, but it's okay. So some pretty drastic changes were made to the Arms Warrior tree. Some abilities were removed, moved around, completely new abilities were added, things like that. So let's go ahead and talk about it and see where things are at, and of course I will share my honest opinion with you guys. So in our level 15 tier, we have Dauntless, which was lower down into the bracket initially. We're going to have that as our first option, which states your abilities cost 20% less rage. Second ability will be Overpower, which functions pretty much the same as stated before. 350 or 375% physical damage, can't be blocked, dodged, or parried, and it has a 60% chance to be a critical strike, and any attacks you have a chance to activate Overpower. And it doesn't say anything about stacking. And then our third choice is Sweeping Strikes. So what we're looking at is already an option between, do you want to be a little bit of a faster attack build? Do you want to be a single attack build, or still go for more of the AoE? I still, and as I initially said before, I don't really like that Sweeping Strikes is a talent. I feel like that is an ability that should stay Arms Warrior baseline. But again, my opinion doesn't necessarily matter as far as gameplay decisions go. I'm only here to, of course, talk about how I think this will affect our gameplay. Initially, my thoughts are for these three that they're not bad talents. I just feel that Overpower or Sweeping Strikes will be the better option. Because I feel like so many of our main attacks will get cooldown resets, and we're going to be wanting... I just feel like endgame wise, the 20% less rage isn't going to be that big of a deal. Compared to, I mean, you look at stuff like Overpower, that's only 10 rage as it is. And this only affects Mortar Strike. So I think that makes Sweeping Strikes a little less appealing. Oh, it's Mortar Strike and Execute. But still, I mean, it doesn't even affect Slam. None of your other attacks, your auto attacks, don't have a chance. It's just exclusively Mortar Strike and Execute, which I do think drastically reduces the value of it. Now, that being said, Mortar Strike is going to hit really hard as it is, so it's going to be effective. But just compared to, like, I feel like how often you'll probably get Overpowered to proc and how useful that is, it's basically guaranteed damage. Unless, of course, they have an Absorb or, you know, kind of an ability up, things like that. Overpower is just such a reliable single target attack, and that was the one thing I think that Arms Warriors was really missing in Warlords or Draenor. Now, sure, we had the option of Slam in our talent tree, but it really wasn't very good. It just, compared to the other options that we had in that tree, Slam just was not a very reliable source of damage. So that made it fall very far behind, whereas Overpower was always a very reliable go-to ability that you could guarantee to do some decent damage, and it was going to land, and which was really, really cool. So I can just see most warriors going for Overpower or Sweeping Strikes with this build. We'll have to wait and see. I'm still on the fence about Dauntless, and I'm willing to be proven wrong, but I just find that Overpower or Sweeping Strikes will be the go-to abilities here, with me leaning towards Overpower initially. Now this one kind of, this is the dicey one for me. Our 30 tier, we have Shockwave, Stormbolt, and Double Time. Shockwave and Stormbolt function exactly the same way they do in live right now, but then Double Time increases the maximum number of charges by 1 and reduces this cooldown by 3 seconds. So the big problem here is we're having to choose between stuns or mobility, and so far from what I've seen on the Legion Alpha is with casters and range classes being so very, very strong right now, and warrior mobility already being fairly limited, this doesn't seem like a very good option. You're basically pigeonholed into taking double time. I feel like, don't get me wrong, Stormbolt is good, Shockwave is good, but you want as much mobility as you can, especially with arcane mages being as strong as they are currently, hunters being as strong as they are currently. I feel like enhancement shamans have quite a bit of range on them now, things like that. You want to be able to close those gaps. As a warrior, if you get caught being kited way too hard and get too far behind, that's hard to recover from. And so abilities like double time tend to soften that blow and actually make you able to stick on the target. So as useful as Shockwave and Stormbolt are, I just see them losing out to double time, and I don't think it's a good class design decision to make warriors choose between, do I want stuns or mobility, especially with our mobility being as limited as it is right now. In our 45 tier, we have Fervor of Battle. It's which states Cleave and Whirlwind generate 2 rage for each target that they hit. Rend and Avatar. Again, another decision that I don't understand why it's a talent choice, and I think this is one of my biggest concerns with Legion, and so this applies for all classes, is I didn't realize it until recently, but the ability Pruning in Legion is getting kind of out of hand. It was a bit drastic and WOD, and I feel like players were asking for it, and so the fact that they got it isn't necessarily a bad thing, and I think Blizzard went a little too far with some classes and maybe not far enough with others. Affliction Warlocks, I think, are a big example of that. Affliction Warlocks and Arms Warriors, they hardly have like any abilities, it feels like. Whereas Druids still feel like they have too many. Even Enhancement Shamans, I feel like they still have a lot of abilities. But in Legion, at first it looked like we were getting a ton of abilities, and then I realized the other week that, yeah, they were getting a lot of abilities-ish. A lot of them are hidden behind choices like this, where again, you can have Rend, you have Avatar, but you have to choose between one of the two of them. And a lot of abilities are hidden in your artifact weapon, which is fine, but again, they're hidden behind more walls, and you have to unlock them. And again, by the time you're done, you're really not going to have a whole lot of abilities to mess with, and that can really make a class really boring to play. It can pigeonhole a class very hard, and it can make them fall behind on a competitive level compared to other classes. Even right now, thinking about Frost Mages, I still to this day do not understand why Deep Freeze was taken away from Frost Mages. It doesn't make any sense. It's a quintessential Frost Mage ability, and it makes absolutely no sense why it's gone. It makes no sense to me why Arms Warriors don't have Rend as a baseline ability. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I'm really concerned with the decision of ability pruning, especially since players have made it pretty vocal and pretty clear about the fact that they don't really like the way it's going. Now, this is still an alpha, so a lot of stuff can change, and I do honestly believe that Blizzard is paying attention to feedback. Be as cynical and condescending as you want about that. From what I've seen, based on their posts and some of their interactions on Twitter and things like that, I know they're seeing it. Now, ultimately, they're going to make the decision that they feel is best for the game, and if anything has proven us right, or what's the word I'm looking for? If anything's been proven over the past few years of WoW, it's that the community doesn't always know what they want, and I will take that to my grave. But just some of the decisions in class direction they're going, it kind of scares me a little bit. And then lastly in this tier, we have Avatar as well, which is on a 1.5 minute cooldown. Transform into a Colossus for 20 seconds, dealing 20% increased damage and removing all roots and snares. So, I mean, get a little more rage generation. So already we're seeing the idea of you want to be a little bit faster paced, where you're getting, movement speed, reduction of rage cost, generate more rage, or do you want to be more of a single target monster? So you got the Overpower, the Stormbolt, you can do the Rend or the Avatar, things like that. So you're getting options for builds, which isn't a bad thing. I'll give them kudos for that. Whether or not any of this is actually viable and we actually get options, again, that's yet to be seen. And it's still too early to tell. Like every class, like anytime anybody asks, how is this class in alpha, how's this class, and it's like, it's okay right now because nothing is stone. Everything is overtuned, undertuned, and so it'll be interesting to see what this all looks like come live. In our 60 tier, our second wind is still around. You gain 6% health every 1 second when you haven't taken damage in the last 5 seconds. Still, my opinion stays the same on that one. I don't see it being very viable in a PvP situation. There's just too many other things going around between pets and traps and dots and bleeds and all that kind of stuff that are going to make you take damage. I just don't see it being very likely that you'll get out of combat. That, and I don't think it fits with warrior playstyle. I just don't think it does. As a warrior, you shouldn't be rewarded for running away. As a warrior, I don't feel like it's a good since they're being huge about all this class fantasy and immersion stuff, I don't see how giving warriors an incentive to flee battle is a good class design when the whole point of the class is to get in there, be the first one in, mix it up, bring on the offensive. As a warrior, I've never liked playing passively, and I know that ticks a lot of my arena partners off, which is probably why I can't keep arena partners. But I just don't understand what the point is. Like, if I'm going to do the most damage and be the most effective when I'm out in the fray, messing fools up and getting hit so I can get rage to keep like pumping damage back out there, why would I sit behind a pillar? I just don't see this design of Second Wind being very useful, practical, or applicable. I just don't see how it's going to work. Bounding Stride. Heroic Leap's cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds, and it also increases your run speed by 70% for 3 seconds. Awesome. That's a cool talent to have, especially to address warrior mobility. Except it's up against Die by the Sword. Die by the Sword is one of our only really reliable defensive cooldowns right now in the game, and if you take a look at warrior defensive abilities, we have pretty much nothing except for going into defensive stance, which reduces all damage taken and damage done by 25%. Other than that, we have nothing. Like, we have literally no defensive cooldowns. That's it. I have parry, but just only a chance. Again, there's no shield wall. Obviously, we have Rally and Cry been removed. So I have defensive stance. And the bummer is that Die by the Sword is going to replace defensive stance. So I'm still only going to have one defensive cooldown. Now, if healers are tuned properly, I'm okay with this, sort of. But I should be able to still defend myself, especially compared to so many other classes that have so many other defensive cooldowns. I don't understand the concept. And again, I don't understand making us choose between some of these talents. I know, it's crazy, isn't it, puppy? Again, this is a great answer from Shh. Bounding Stride is a great answer for warrior mobility if it wasn't up against one of the only reliable defensive cooldowns we have. I don't see... I don't necessarily like the options we're being presented with and having to choose. In our 75 tier, we have In for the Kill. Mortar Strike generates 40 rage against targets that are below 20% health. Mortal Combo. Mortal Strike has 2 charges, and Blade Storm. Now, this is another one that just seems like a very non-option to me. In for the Kill seems redundant and pointless. With Execute, I mean, most stuff is going to be dead by the time it's at 20% anyways, once they're, taking Execute damage. Generating 40 rage, especially because there's a cap on how much rage you can put into Execute anyways. I like the concept, I just wish it was applied better, and I think this can still be applied, I just think it needs to be applied in a different way. Maybe against targets that are at a higher percentage of health, 25, 30, 35, not sure. Especially since I think we're getting in our artifact weapon, it lets us, or maybe it's the PvP talents, that lets us use Execute on a little bit higher percentage of health. I still think Arms Warrior rage generation is one of the big concerns that I'm seeing on the Legion Alpha, because we're really only generating rage when people deal damage to us, which wouldn't necessarily be a problem, except that if people aren't sitting on you, you're not getting rage, and so you're not doing damage, and if you don't, you're utterly useless at that point. This has been kind of an issue with Arms for a while, and I feel like Legion is the time it needs to be addressed, and that is Arms Warrior rage regeneration. I don't have a problem with, and I don't think it would be a problem for Arms to generate a little bit of rage, or at least more rage from auto attacks as well. They just don't generate enough. And again, an ability like this I think is good if it were implemented in a different way or in a different mechanism. Mortal Combo. Mortal Strike has 2 charges. That I don't see being a bad thing, because Mortal Strike is going to hit so very hard. But compared to the damage that Blade Storm is doing, Blade Storm is just doing way too much damage to be ignored. And so I think Blade Storm is the only obvious or applicable choice you have in this tier as well. 90 Heroic Strike, it costs 15 rage, instant cast, 1.5 second cooldown. It says focus your rage on your next Mortal Strike, causing it to deal attack power 165%-ish times whatever. I don't understand how all that adds up. I gotta brush up on my numbers and how all that works. Additional damage, and it stacks up to 3 times. And this ability is not on the global cooldown. Again, I don't think it's a bad ability. It's interesting to me that it only affects Mortal Strike. Next, we're getting another bleed mechanic, which this I do like. I like that we have this option in here. Slam causes the target to bleed for attack power I don't remember how the math works out. I think that's a whole bunch of typos and weird things there. But physical damage over 10 seconds. So trauma actually used to be in the game a while ago, and it was, again, an additional bleed that you could put on the target from certain attacks, and I believe slam was one of the abilities that would come from. So you do have the option now to go full bleed build, which is kind of cool. Don't get me wrong, that's a cool concept, and I like that Trauma's back. And then comparing that, of course, next to Titanic Might, increases the duration of Colossus Smash by 200%, but halves its effectiveness. This I can only see being really good towards the end of the expansion when our mastery gets up high enough for that to be buffed good enough. But Heroic Strike and Trauma I see being two of the bigger go-to abilities. Heroic Strike I think might be fun, especially for BGs, but I think especially for Arena, Trauma might be the only ability you'll be seeing a lot of, unless we're going for those like heavy burst kind of end the game quick matches. Like maybe Heroic Strike would be good in a Turbo Cleave or something like that. Like our 90 tier to me seems like something that you actually have options in, which is nice compared to some of our other tiers. Like I feel like you actually have an option between Heroic Strike or Trauma, and potentially Titanic Might, depending on how all that balances out. I haven't seen a whole lot of people taking it as of yet, but this is probably one of the more promising-ish tiers that you have as Arms Warriors, at least to me anyways. And then at our 100 tier, we have Anger Management, which basically functions the same. Every 110 rage that you spend reduces the remaining cooldowns of Battle Cry for Arms and Last Stand and Shield Wall for protection by 1 second. Opportunity Strikes, your melee abilities have up to 60% chance based on target's missing health to trigger an extra attack that deals 200% physical damage. And then Ravager still pretty much sucks. There's no reason to really take Ravager, not going to lie. Honestly, Opportunity Strikes or Anger Management are the only two viable talents there. And Opportunity Strikes sounds really cool. I really want to see how this functions and what this looks like in game. And I really want to see what this is going to look like in comparison and how this balances out with so many of our other talents. But overall, I'm kind of concerned, and by kind of, I mean very concerned with the direction they're taking Arms Warriors. The damage looks great. The damage is wonderful. But it just seems like we're more and more reliant on a healer and what comp we're playing, which is kind of bothersome to me. I don't understand why we need to have so few defensive cooldowns, especially with classes and hybrid healing being so off the charts right now. And I'm trying not to let this be too concerning just because, again, it is still alpha. But just compared to right now what some of the other specs have, you know, Enhancement Shamans, their off heals are great. Feral Druids still have insane defensives and mobility. We're looking at Fury Warriors actually have some decent self-heals and how they're counteracting them taking more damage while they're enraged. All those things, and it just feels like Arms is just being stripped more and more and more. And I can't really believe I'm saying this, but I feel bad for Frost Mages as well. Again, don't misquote me. I still hate the buggers. But out of all, like I'm not sure where Blizzard's going with the class design on both of these classes and specs. So, again, like I keep saying, we'll have to wait and see. I'm still optimistic but concerned because this is still just alpha, but we're getting closer and closer to launch with every week that passes. We're getting closer and closer to beta, and so the longer this goes on, we'll have to wait and see, but the more likely it is that it's going to be set in stone. But I do anticipate quite a few more changes when it comes to classes in general, specs specifically in Legion, just to balance everything out and hopefully make everything somewhat playable and enjoyable. Some things that I would like to see in conclusion, I would like to see maybe some of the talents here thought a little bit better. Some of the choices I think don't make sense to me, and it doesn't seem right or necessarily fair to make us choose between some of the stuff. And then I would like to see having a few more defensive cooldowns come back as a warrior. I want to be able to defend myself as a warrior. That makes sense that I should be able to defend myself. Even if it's, you know, I don't necessarily need Shield Wall back. I don't care that that's gone. I don't necessarily even care that we have Rallying Cry back. But somehow, someway, let me be able to effectively defend myself so I'm not up the creek without a paddle unless I have a pocket healer. Because I don't always have a pocket healer. And I don't want to not be able to play the game or play my class just because I wasn't lucky enough to queue with a healer. It doesn't seem like effective and intuitive gameplay design to me. But let me know what you guys think, especially if you play Warrior. Very curious. I want to hear what your guys' thoughts are. And as always, I want to hear what you guys, what your thoughts are on your class so far as you see it in Legion. Please do remember, as always, all of this in alpha, so it is going to change almost undeniably it's going to change. Which direction, we'll have to wait and see. But definitely excited and enjoying watching some of the different streams and videos that I can get my hands on. And as far as performance goes, definitely going to be keeping my eye on this. Fingers crossed for at least beta access once the alpha passes and we go into beta, because I would like to be able to show that to you guys firsthand rather than relying on just what I'm able to see, because then it feels kind of cheesy, because I'm like, well, you guys could just go watch the same thing. But I'm excited to talk about it, and I want to talk about it. Hopefully you want to talk about it as well. But that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you have yet to do so already. I'm still shooting for 500 subs come summertime, so if you would like to help me get there, I would love your support more than anything else in the world. And thank you to those who have subbed already. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But that's going to do it for this video. So as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.